Hey, how's it going, everybody? And welcome to the very first episode of the North American Connections, a show where two hosts from two different countries show a united show a united front. I knew it was going to do that. There we go. Sorry, I told you that was going to happen. I knew it would. Sorry, a show where two hosts from two different countries show a united front in informing their respective nations of the issues we all face today. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Soror, and I'm joined by my amazing friend and fellow researcher and partner, your other host, Bev Collins. Bev, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm really excited to be part of this new show with you, Mike. We've talked about it for a long time, and I really think it's time that we join forces across our borders and connect North American people to the issues of the day.
Absolutely, and like you said, we've been. I just asked you before we went live there, and I said, have we really been planning this for like forever? It's been a year that we've talked about
At
this,
least,
so I can finally say I'm honored to say that we got there, girl. We got
yes,
there.
we did. Determination pays off. You know, it's an exciting opportunity for people to discuss the issues that seem to be affecting all of us on both sides of the border. And we do have many issues in common. And what happens to you happens to us. So I think it's really important to have an audio show and we can share with people from both sides of the border on what's going on in our countries.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 110%. Now, there's a lot of new, um, people that are listening to the show. So I guess if we wanted to just take a little bit to kind of describe, who we are, introduce ourselves, and I'm going to let ladies go first.
Oh, thanks a lot. Well, as you said, my name is Bev Collins, and I'm in British Columbia, Canada. I have been part of the political um, reality in Canada for well over 20 years. I've been following all of our trade agreements since the Free Trade Agreement back in the early 80s with Reagan and Mulroney. And I have been outspoken on free trade and NAFTA and free trade area of the Americas and the MAI and all the different trade agreements that the corporations have been trying to get passed through our respective governments for a number of years. And I've spoken on that. I've certainly been out there speaking on the corporate elite and really who controls our governments and what it means to us, the people. And of course, as you're well aware, I got involved in the issue of 9/11 truth some years ago when one of my elections, the last election that I ran in federally, was back in 2008. And I spoke to the need for an independent investigation into the events of 9/11. We had lost 24 Canadians that day as well. And many of the laws that have come into place in the US since that time have also been replicated in Canada under different types of legislation. So we're parallel to your Patriot Act and the loss of our rights and freedoms due to the events of 9/11.
Wow. Okay. Well, most of the people know me, but I'll go through a quick little thing here on myself. I awoke in 2004 when I saw the documentary Loose Change and basically began researching everything I could about 9/11 and didn't realize that the rabbit hole went much deeper. 2013, I started a show on Blog Talk called Wake Up to the Truth Radio and eventually moved over to Media Broadcasting Center. That's where I met you, Bev, and Chance George, and we've done some shows together in the past, and always remain in contact. Had a lot of great conversations. And when I left NBC and started broadcasting on YouTube, it was under Soror Strikes Back, which is now under strike right now, but that's okay. But there's a new channel called the Voice of Reason that will debut tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern, and of course this show, which we're working on a regular schedule for future shows. So I think I covered everything there, didn't I? I think so.
I think so, and that's awesome. And yes, Media Broadcasting Corporation did an awesome job about bringing a lot of different shows on board to talk about the issues of the day. So I was very grateful for my time on NBC as well.
Yeah, me too. Me too. We met. I had Chance on one of my shows. I believe it was last week, and it was an eye opener for a lot of the listeners over there, because I don't think that they really know what's, from over here in the States. We don't get a lot of news out of Canada, and
Mm,
but you guys seem to get pretty good coverage of what's going on over here. So
mhm.
it's kind of it's a must that, we're only separated by a very small body of water, and so we are definitely controlled. I believe that, under the same crown. And Bev, you told me in the past, hey, if these bankers and these corporations and all these people can cross the borders and shake hands and unite, then the people sure can. And that's kind of
And you're
stuck with
right.
me.
And I think we need to, Mike, because so many of the issues that these large corporations have brought to the forefront, such as the trade agreements, such as the loss of our rights and freedoms, are really affecting both of us, on both sides of the border. And the TPP is going to affect both of our countries and the labor rights of our workers, as well as our environmental rights. So it's complete corporate control. And I think if the people in both countries knew this, we would be able to collectively do something about it. What I find is that we do hear a lot about what's going on in the US from here, and a different perspective than what you might hear from being so close to the action. And the same for you. You might hear the occasional story about Canada that we don't get to hear because we're too close to the action up here. So I think it's important to be able to share our different stories on what's been talked about in regards to all of these issues. And 9/11 is a perfect example of selective media coverage. The U.S. heard about Newfoundland and our eastern provinces that assisted Americans on the day of 9/11, when planes had to land right away after the strikes hit. And our Canadian people tried to do their best to help our fellow Americans that day. So we heard a lot about that from the States, not so much from Canada. But we did hear about what was happening in the US in regards to the terrorist attacks that occurred in New York and in Washington and in Pennsylvania that day, and how it's affected you down there has directly affected us up here in regards to legislation, anti-terrorist legislation, in regards to wars that we're now involved in that we never would have considered otherwise. But of course, 9/11 allowed that opportunity to bring about perpetual war in both countries.
Absolutely. And so that's why we decided today we were going to discuss the events of 9/11, and some where 15 years, Bev, already. And I've got to I've got to ask you, I mean, after 15 years, do you think honestly that we are ever going to see an unbiased new investigation into this event?
That's a good question. For many years, I really hope so. But now I believe that they've really done everything they can. The media, as well as your government, has done everything it can to keep it quiet. Even after the recent release of 28 pages, that didn't make much news in your mainstream media. It was more of an afterthought of, oh, yeah, that happened so long ago. Who cares about the information on the 28 pages? Well, the people who have been following the events of 9/11 sure do. Many of us thought, okay, here comes a red herring. They're just going to focus it all on Saudi Arabia and not mention any other involvement of other outside countries or organizations that were involved in the event of 9/11. So for many, it is a red herring. For some, it says, aha, finally, the original official story is not true. And so for some, it proved that the original story is not true. So then what's the state's going to do about it? Well, sadly, so far, nothing. And it's important, I think, to have an independent investigation. We here in Canada have actually been calling for an independent investigation since the first election after the events of 9/11, which was here in 2004. It was only the smaller parties that were calling for it. When I went mainstream in 2008, we called for it, and then that's when the mainstream media attacked us all and said, "How dare you?" and tried to get the parties to get rid of us for even daring to ask for an investigation into the events of 9/11, because they couldn't see the connection of why we were losing our rights and sovereignty, why we were being dragged into illegal wars based on the lies surrounded by 9/11. And it's been very difficult here in Canada to try and keep the truth out there. We have made some headway. We have woken up lots of people, and I'd like to believe that's been happening in the US over the years as well.
It certainly has, but the thing it is over here, it seems like every time we get some awareness going and really start making some headway, and we turn around and they throw another boogeyman at us, and we seem to forget, or we lose track of what's going on. And now it seems to be daily. There's something new daily.
Hmm.
That and But I do believe that there's definitely more people in this country, I believe, that know or believe that 9/11 was an inside job, than those that don't. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's just that's what kind of some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. Just keeping it with the keep it simple stupid method.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of inconsistencies and things that don't make sense about this day.
Yes.
And I just the 9/11 Commission report is, my goodness, it should be put in the fiction section.
Absolutely.
There are things that just, it does not make any sense. Heck, even the 9/11 members of 9/11 Commission were like, not all of us got a look at everything. Some people on the commission got to look at some documents while others didn't. And, it's like they set us up to fail. And I think that was very important when these members came out and said that, because, not a lot of people even paid attention to it because they were so focused on Iraq at that time too.
Yes.
Like I mean, that's what I mean. Another, which was no doubt an illegal invasion, without a doubt.
Right.
And it's kind of just barreled over into what we have today.
And you're absolutely right. They did use the events of 9/11 to specifically target both Afghanistan and Iraq. And neither one of those countries had anything to do with the events of 9/11. It's interesting how Saudi Arabian news has recently released articles identifying that it was the US themselves that launched the terror attacks in the States to be able to bring forward perpetual war, a state of perpetual war, so that they could erode the rights of the American citizens, at the same time really promote its imperialistic hegemony over the world itself through militaristic adventures. So you can see, even since the events of 9/11, how many different countries the US has gone into based on the lies surrounding 9/11.
Right. Well, now let's kind of talk a little bit about some of these. I would say that the smoking gun, in my opinion, is, and the easiest way to turn people on to what happened on 9/11 would be Building 7.
Yes.
This is a building that was not um, hit by an airplane, and yet at 5 p.m. in the afternoon, it comes straight down, free fall speed, basically,
Mm-hmm.
but straight down into its own footprint. And what's crazy about that is a lot of people that know about 9/11, it's very easy for them. They'd never heard of Building 7. They kept Building 7 really hush hush.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the 9/11 I don't even, did it even bring up anything in the 9/11 Commission report? Very, very little.
I don't think they did.
I don't think so either. And I think that's why I was trying to remember if it was in the actual report or if it was one of the commissioners that spoke up and said, we didn't even discuss it.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? That's a very, very big piece of the puzzle. And I explained it to people. You have, well, how did this building fall straight down? Well, it's easy. You grab a coffee table, Okay. And if you kick out the back end of a coffee table, what's going to happen? That table is going to tip over.
Hmm.
And there was the damage on building 7 was in that corner. But if you take out all the legs of this coffee table at the same time, it'll come straight down. And
Yes.
that's what building 7 was. It doesn't make sense to me. What are your thoughts on building 7?
Well, I totally agree with you. I actually feel that Building 7 is the Achilles heel of the entire event, because when you realize that a 49-story building came down in 6.5 seconds, then you go, well, wait a minute, it wasn't hit by a plane. And if it was just office fires, there's absolutely no way that it could come down that quickly in its own footprint, as you said. I had the opportunity when I had my show 9/11 Talks to interview a gentleman by the name of Tony Zambotti, who is a member of the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. And Tony actually focused on the girders and steel girders that were in the building of the 49-story building, Solomon building, which was building 7. And even if that one particular girder had let go, the way the structure of that building was built, there's absolutely no way that the entire building could have gone flat and down in 6.5 seconds. So he does a lot of good sharing of information that proves that. But once you see that, and once you realize that, okay, building 7 came down in controlled demolition, and they must have had that the demolition ability before it came down. It must have been, the explosives must have been put in there well prior to the building coming down for it to be able to be a controlled demolition. Then when you see the larger buildings, Tower 1 and 2, coming down in 10.5 seconds and 11 seconds, and you're talking 110-story buildings, then you can begin to really question the entire events of that day and what indeed brought it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, while you were talking, I wanted to I'll pull this up here. And for those that maybe there are people that are not aware of building 7 coming down, but this is footage of the building. That's building 7 right there, going straight down. And these are going to be different angles, you know, and these are from different cameras. And I mean, you look at it and it's like it disappears. I mean, just completely disappears. It doesn't look to me any different than a regular demolition. Like if you ever seen an old hotel or an old apartment building, I mean, that's what, you know, some of these angles, you got the classic kink even in the building before it comes down. And there was a lot of very important offices in that building too, wasn't there?
Absolutely. There was Rudy Giuliani's operations center there. There was CIA, IRS. There was a whole group of banks and big bankers in there as well. So yeah, it was quite the building. As a matter of fact, there was information in there that were investigations being done on different corrupt acts that had occurred previously. So all that information and evidence was destroyed in that 6.5 seconds that that building came down.
Right, which is, you know, leads me to another question too, is Giuliani's office there was very, very protected, fireproof even. And yet I just, there was many documents in this building too that had to do with the Pentagon and possible missing money from the Pentagon, which is still happening today here.
Yes, 8.5 trillion. I mean, come on.
Right.
I remember, what was it? What did Rumsfeld say the day before 9/11 on September the 10th? He said something like 2.3 trillion.
2.3 trillion. Yeah.
Yeah. And they've never accounted for that. No one's ever been held accountable for any of that missing money.
Right. But if you don't file your taxes to the T, you will get nailed even over a $10 little mistake.
Yeah.
But $2.3 trillion is less important than that $10 you made a mistake on, I guess.
Well, after the events of 9/11, no one dared to question it because we were all so focused on the attacks of what happened that day, right?
Sure.
So, which is what they wanted. So, you know, people's heartstrings went out to the U.S. at that time from all over the world. You had our sympathy. You had our support in going after ever was responsible. The difficulty is we didn't realize we were going to be lied to by the US government in regards to exactly who was responsible. So at first it was Afghanistan, and the world united with the US to go into Afghanistan because how dare the Taliban be responsible and Osama bin Laden have done such a criminal activity. Let's go into Afghanistan and take care of that country. Little did we know that was a big lie. And the same with Iraq and Saddam Hussein. Dick Cheney himself often tried to connect Saddam Hussein to the events of 9/11. He can deny it all he wants now that he's older, but he certainly did try and connect the two to make people believe that Iraq was involved in the events of 9/11, which was yet another lie.
Oh yeah, they were talking as early as that morning,
Yeah,
on who was responsible for it, which I'm surprised I didn't. To me, it just felt like, wow, that was some really quick detective work.
Yeah, they had
And
the culprit right away.
yeah, it's just amazing. So while we're talking, there's just going to be kind of some footage going on, and there's so many YouTube videos that are done very, very well. By the way, I can't believe it's been 15 years, but at the same time, it's that a lot of Americans that I've talked to call this the second JFK assassination almost.
Right.
The evidence is all around us,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just been kind of swept under the rug, and it's been used to destroy our freedoms. 9/11 was. It's been used to destroy any kind of peace that we had within ourselves. We were on high alert. I remember the terror alert, a color system there that they had. 1 minute it's yellow, and then all of a sudden 10 minutes later it's red, and then it goes down to green, and it just kept, it was just a constant psychological warfare on our minds.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't realize that there were a lot of Canadians in there. So that's why I'm glad you bring this up. There was also, there's just so many questions, but there's, they found nanothermite in the dust.
Mm-hmm.
How do you explain that? That I don't know of any nanothermite that goes inside of any airplane, and certainly isn't. I hope it's not, put in when buildings are built, because that's scary.
Yeah, especially military grade nanothermite. So how did it get in there? Well, we've had some experts on 9/11 come and share their information and evidence with us in the last 15 years. And one of those experts, to my mind, is Susan Lindauer. She was able to not only very much prove the fact that the U.S. had been previously told by other intelligence organizations from 12 different countries that this could happen in September, and that this could be done by, an attack on the trade towers, that she knew months in advance. She tried to warn the government about it. And of course, they locked her up as the first person under the Patriot Act as a threat to their national security. But what she also revealed in one of the interviews was the fact that there were trucks going into the towers months before the events of 9/11, and going in around 4 a.m. or whatever, and then leaving again around 6 or 7. There had to be a way for these trucks to be able to come into the towers and be able to have the time they needed in order to set these explosives, so that when the time came, the buildings would come down in the spectacular fashion that they did in 10.5 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Well, and another thing is I don't think a lot of people realize this, but 9/11 was more than just a terrorist attack. Rather, whatever reason you believe, or if you don't believe it's an inside job, or you do believe it is, it's still a terrorist attack, no matter how you split it. And but this was also the biggest heist in world history. The amount of money and gold bars and stuff that were being, some witnesses says they were seeing dump trucks going in, under building 4, I believe.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because of course, when they finally got to the vaults were empty. But who's going to focus on vaults, empty vaults, when you were focusing on the buildings that were above it? And I think that justifies why people heard the explosions in the basement and the lower levels prior to the buildings coming down.
No doubt. And they're even firemen themselves
Yes.
have described, explosives. We heard an explosive, and then, we hear, like, the one fireman even described, all of a sudden we hear boom, 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 boom.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the floors start coming down. Now, they blame this thing on the pancake theory. Now, I'm sorry, but there would be some kind of a resistance here if the floors you're talking 110 stories.
Yes.
Goes straight down. Don't you think you'd see a little resistance there if that was the case?
Absolutely. And actually, when you see the original video on how the towers were designed and built, the steel girders, there's no way that they could all come down at the same time unless they were cut by torches, or nanothermite, as you talked about.
Mm-hmm. So, and then people say, well, what do they got to gain? What do they got to gain?
Well,
I love that one. What was the purpose? America would never do that to their own people. Well, really?
They've done it to their own people for a long time.
A long time. We must have forgot Pearl Harbor, where we had foreknowledge. And we taunted. We almost begged Japan to come over and attack us. We had the USS Liberty. I can name a lot of different instances. We have Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin, where you have supposed Vietnamese ships that were firing on us, and we defended ourselves, yet all of the data shows that never happened, and we basically shot stuff from ships, shot our guns and missiles from ships at ghosts. There was nobody there. But that was enough to bring us into Vietnam. And so don't think for a minute, if our government can sacrifice the lives of our military, can sacrifice the lives of our police or firemen or rescue workers, they will surely have no problem sacrificing the lives of ordinary citizens that are at work on a Tuesday morning on September 11th.
Absolutely. And what did they gain with this attack happening? Well, it allowed them to launch perpetual war against 5 different countries. It also allowed them to remove our rights and freedoms under your Patriot Act, your NDAA. The continuation of loss of rights and freedoms have very much gathered strength since 9/11, to a point where most Americans and Canadians have lost our rights to free speech, they're now trying to disarm you and take away your Second Amendment at the same time that they're bringing in foreign troops to do it. There's so much that's changed because of 9/11, and it changed the US and it's changed the entire world because of these events. So when we know outside the US that this was caused by lies, by a constructed effort of some people within the US government, must have had knowledge that this was occurring and must have played a part in order for it to be carried out the way it was with military precision that day. Don't forget, all your NORAD planes were on stand down. Who was that done by? Well, Dick Cheney, as I understand it.
Dick Cheney, the most evil man on the planet. That's what I refer to him as. We could take it back all the way to the very beginning. I have never in my lifetime seen a president not be whisked away in time of any kind of war or any kind of state emergency. And this man sat for 20 minutes reading My Pet Goat.
Exactly. And then
it makes no sense.
Yep.
Yeah, and then he goes on and says, oh, well, I remember standing out in the hallway, and of course they had the TV on, and I saw the first plane hit. And I thought, oh, what a terrible pilot. And then I heard about the second plane, and they whisked me away. No, they did not whisk you away when you were told about the second plane, George.
Yeah.
You sat there and sat there and sat there.
Mhm.
That is not just for the safety purposes alone. Do you think your prime minister would be able to just be out in a public event and them not protect him over
No,
something like this? Get him out of there?
in a second they would.
So I guess I guess on that day, well, we're in Florida. It's all good.
Mhm.
No biggie. I'm in an elementary school. The look on his face just and I'm not much, obviously I don't know what was running through his head for real, but the
Mhm.
look on his face said to me, oh boy, it's happening.
Yes.
you know that's what it looked like, was almost like I knew this was coming, I just didn't know when.
Mhm. So he can play plausible deniability.
Right.
But he did
So
know it was coming. Like, for different countries to actually have their intel, let the US know ahead of time that this was coming, and for the US government to not do anything really then tells you that there is complicity in what was occurring that day.
sure, sure, it makes absolutely no sense to me. There's so much about 9/11 that makes absolutely no sense to me.
Mhm.
um, we have very interesting people now and that, but let's, before we uh, you know talk too much, that 28 redacted pages, what did you think about the release of it?
Well, I was happy to finally hear that it was released, but at the same time, I think there's still a lot of missing information and evidence that has been found to have been available that was not put into the commission report. And I really think it calls for a new independent investigation based on all this new evidence that was never looked at or investigated. And I'm kind of surprised that nobody, it seems, in your government, in Congress or Senate, is now pushing for this once they have read those 28 pages, even though they say those 28 pages would make you rethink everything you've ever known. I'm not hearing anybody coming forward saying we must have an independent investigation now to discuss all of this that we found out.
Right. And I look at it as a situation where it's like, wow, this definitely does have Saudi Arabia written all over it. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to Saudi Arabia. See, I mean, there's a lot of Americans that are like, well, we got to go in and we got to handle it. We got to go take care of it. We got to go after Saudi Arabia. It's not that easy. Um, the House of Saud is very much, uh, in fact, there's never been another president in the history of our nation that has had so close of ties to another foreign government. But Saudi Arabia has got billions of dollars invested in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
They have a ton of money sitting here. So it's not just China. And it would make sense to think, well, I mean, how many was it? 15 out of the 19 supposed hijackers were
From
from
Saudi
Saudi
Arabia.
Arabia?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you
Exactly.
think, but instead we end up in an opium field in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. And what's interesting to see is this same Saudi government has donated $100 million towards your presidential candidate. So how is that going to keep their influence separate from the USA?
Sure. There's the 28 pages to me. I thought to myself, I want, I'm glad that the people and everybody that pushed for it got, at least made headway. It was progress.
Mm-hmm.
We forced them to release something, but the problem is they had an awful long time to doctor those 28 pages too.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's always been my concern, is we're going to see these 28 pages come out and it really isn't going to tell us a whole lot. They've had a long time to cover this up. A long time.
I think
15 years.
I think it proves that we were lied to. The official story is a lie. And so if you realize that the official story that we were told that day is a lie, then how can you not then see that much of the other information that they shared with us to lead us to these illegal wars were also lies?
That's true.
Mhm.
That's a good way to look at it. Um, but yeah, which there is just I honestly believe that I don't even think that we have enough hours in one show to be able to go through every weird or questionable event that took place that day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even down to people that were evacuated from building from the North Tower into the South Tower.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense either.
Yeah.
You know, even elementary schools leave the building and go to a safe spot across from the school.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Now,
Get away from it.
right, and and here's what I think. I think that there's been a lot of theories that have come out, and I've looked at all the different theories, and there's been a lot of questions that have been asked, or even debates. You know, you've seen them, the fights, the arguments.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there was planes. Oh, there wasn't planes. Um, I think the most important thing is, no matter how it was done at this point, it's finding out who the key players in this were.
Mm.
And we've seen a lot of them, and they still are walking free today.
Yes, they are. And they're still continuing now with their further agenda of defending America. You know, their military strategy to go after other countries, and yeah, they're promoting that on a big scale. So when you realize, you know, Massimo Mazzucco has done a 5-hour video on the events of 9/11, and I really like what it covers. It's 5 hours, but it's done in 3 different segments. But I really like what it covers, and it covers the people, as you mentioned, involved with the Project for New American Century, how these particular people played huge position roles in the event of what happened, and they said themselves, you know, in order to proceed with this, we need a you know, another terrorist attack type of thing to make it happen, and they did, and then they've been able to proceed with all of their wars based on their justification of what happened on 9/11. So I think all of those people should be investigated and brought to the forefront.
Oh, sure. The PNAC report, what Bev is talking about, you can read the entire report.
Mm-hmm.
It's public, and it is basically a playbook, in my opinion, a playbook that has been followed almost perfectly up until now. It talks about basically what I got out of it was global domination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was going to strengthen our military. It was going to, they even give figures of how much money it would take to put more U.S. bases in other countries. Um, and they were going to start in the Middle East. It was going to then go over to Asia. And what's going on right now? The Middle East is basically, uh, you know, blown to nothing, except for a few, you know, countries.
Mm-hmm.
And who are we having problems with right now? Well, we're talking about China and North Korea. We are now talking about Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it's supposed to go over to Europe. And that's what they want. And me personally, as an American citizen, I don't want to see our military spread out all over the world. I do not think that there's a reason we need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Operation Iraqi Freedom is what they called it.
Mm-hmm. Which it wasn't freedom at all. It's
It
double
sure
speak.
was not.
It's double speak. Everything that they say, like peace, is actually means war and what have you. So it is very much double speak that they've been doing. And that's the difficulty. You know, over the past 15 years, the U.S. has lost the love of the world because of these 9/11 lies that have led to the 9/11 wars. So now the U.S. is very isolated when it comes to the world's people, because they see the U.S. as one of the predominant war criminals in our world. And until justice is done, until we actually see the perpetrators behind the events of 9/11 and behind the illegal wars that have been caused because of the lies of 9/11, you're never going to see peace.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's just, there's so much going on right now. I really encourage everybody to look up the PNAC report. This was a neocon think tank, basically. And many of the authors of this report served under Daddy Bush and Junior Bush,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, makes me a little bit curious. This is why I don't believe, in my honest opinion, I swear I don't believe that Bush Jr. was smart enough to pull this off. I think he was the face thrown out front. I think if anything, Bush had a lot to do with Iraq, for sure. First we controlled the heroin and the opium and stuff in Afghanistan, and then we went over and we took over the oil fields with these private contractors that are getting paid just a ton of money, while our men and women of our militaries are getting killed while oil fields are being protected. And from there, this new president has not changed anything. He's expanded on everything. The playbook is still the same. It's just grown.
Yep. And the people were promised change. When they finally got rid of Bush and brought in a African-American president, or so they thought, they believed that he would change things. They believed he'd close Guantanamo. They believed he would go after those perpetrators behind the events of 9/11, that he would go after the Bush administration if it was found that they were culpable of it, which many of the members were. And nothing has happened. It's almost like they had something on him and he had something on them, and they chose not to blackmail each other, But what's very unfortunate is until the world sees some kind of arrests and justice over the people that perpetrated this, the U.S. will never have the support of the world again for any of its military adventures.
No, we have definitely, we're not well liked. The countries that were in support of us during 9/11, and just how quickly these allies, after we went into Iraq, our allies were disappearing at a rapid rate. And here's another thing too that drives me crazy is, now we have a big problem right now with the majority of people are very upset that Muslims want to bring Sharia law into America. Well, of course, the American people are saying, well, absolutely not. We're not going to sit around and have a religion or another country come into our country and tell us how to do things. Well, that's kind of double standard, because that's exactly what we did in Iraq. As we went in there, we changed their voting process. We changed their entire way of life. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Saddam Hussein is a guy that we needed to hug and love on, because he was an evil man. But he was not responsible for 9/11.
No.
And weapons of mass destruction, nobody's got more of them than we do.
Yep.
So I guess I'm just being honest here. I don't understand the double standards here. It's and our men and women in our militaries, yours as well, have lost their lives. That's why I say, almost 3,000 people on 9/11 were killed and millions followed.
Yep. Well, one and a half.
That's what I'm talking about.
1.5 million innocent Iraqis that had nothing to do with the attacks on 9/11 have been killed. What is it? Over 4,500 of your soldiers were killed, plus many more have committed suicide since they got home due to their participation in the atrocities. Canada lost 158 soldiers due to these illegal wars that we shouldn't have been a part of. So where does it end? I would like to believe the American people will finally have, like, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and their particular supporters arrested and actually investigated. And until that's done, you're not going to see any changes whatsoever. What I see as a potential happening, which concerns me, is it has been 15 years. None of the evidence has really come out about what happened on 9/11 and the truth for the people. That what concerns me is they could do it again. They could launch another attack on the USA, and then people will just all forget about what happened in 9/11 because this will be a new one.
And that's what we've always done. See, we've always needed a boogeyman to keep us scared here.
Yeah.
So we could, the Patriot Act was very easy to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Most didn't read it. I know Ron Paul voted against it for the simple fact that when they asked why he voted against it, he said, because I read it.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't even get through the entire Patriot Act before he realized how unconstitutional this bill was, or this legislation was.
Yeah.
And you guys in Canada ended up, was it C-51?
We've ended up, yep, that's our latest one is C-51. We started with C-36, which was your equivalent to Patriot Act, then moved into C-42, which affected the no-fly list, and then C-7, and it just continued on, different pieces of legislation. And of course, then a year ago, October, we had a supposed terrorist attack that occurred in Ottawa with a lone range gunman that went on to Parliament Hill and attacked our parliament at the very same morning that our conservative government was trying to force through another piece of anti-terrorist legislation. So by the end of the day, the Prime Minister got his wish, and that legislation was forced through, which then became C-51.
Mm-hmm. And now we have the NDAA, which is the Patriot Act on steroids. And I noticed with a lot of your legislation and a lot of our legislation, a lot of it matches up almost word for word.
Yes, it does.
You know, it's kind of like everybody sat in a room from both countries and said, okay, this is how we're going to write it. And this is how we're going to put it in play.
Mm-hmm.
And just because the sentence looks a little different, you don't get a different meaning out of it.
That's right, exactly. So you can imagine the anger from Canadians that here we are having to abide by laws that were put in place based on lies. I mean,
sure.
Why should we have to abide by laws based on lies?
Mm-hmm. And for us over here, it was, well, we're going to willingly give away our rights and our freedoms in order to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the PNAC said, something, in order to get the American people on board, we're going to need something catastrophic like a new Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And sure enough, 4 years later, the new Pearl Harbor took place.
Mm-hmm.
And everything changed. So when people say 9/11 changed the world, it truly, truly did. And not for the good. I have a hard time believing, and like I said, I could go into, there is so much evidence that Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset,
Mm-hmm.
that the bin Laden family is very close with the Bush family.
Yep.
These guys are actually, on the morning of 9/11, we're in a meeting with George Bush Sr., the bin Laden family.
Yep.
And we're able to get flown out of the country while the rest of the flights were shut down. Airports were shut down. They were even shutting down trains, like the Amtrak, things like that. But the planes that nobody could fly anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
in or out of the country. But the bin Ladens were put on a plane and sent back almost immediately.
And weren't they also joint members of the Carlyle Group, which is a major defense contractor that stood to benefit from all of this?
Yes. Carlyle Group, which, if you don't know who they are, like not only with what Bev just said, but they are also a huge branch of the Bilderbergs.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a big puzzle that we have been trying to put together for a very, very long time. And now I hate to say it, but we've pretty much got everything, all the pieces we need, except for we're just missing one little middle section of this, and that's what's coming next.
Mm-hmm. Well, if nothing is done about this, if they're allowed to get away, with the events of 9/11, and it's never investigated, and the true people behind it are never brought to justice, then sadly, we can only determine that it will happen again.
Mm-hmm. And it has.
Yeah.
It brought us into war, and this is a never-ending war.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not and I want to, because I have friends, a good friend of mine actually, who and you're friends with as well, people that were firemen
Yes.
on 9/11 that were there, rescue workers, people that lost their lives. This is not, has never been, at least for me, and I know for you as well, Bev, um, we have never forgotten those that have been murdered.
Yeah.
And that's exactly
And
why we're fighting so hard. So it's not a slap in the face. Many of the victims' families have tried to come forth. I'm talking thousands of families to demand answers from our government and have been pushed aside.
mm-hmm.
As if it
Well, when
doesn't even matter.
the first thing that really got me interested in it was not only watching it that morning occur, but also then a Press for Truth documentary with the Jersey girls, which were women who lost their husbands that day in their fight that they had in order to try and get the answers that they were looking for on what occurred that day. And it's interesting because to even bring that up in Canada has you smeared from all the mainstream media as anti-American for even questioning the official events of what happened. It makes you immediately anti-American for questioning what took place.
Do you guys get a lot of that over there too? Are you considered just terrible people for having questions at all? I mean, I'm just curious. What is it like to
Oh,
question
abs-
those in charge
abs-
over there?
they don't want you to question them at all. I mean, what happened to me in 2008 when I was almost kicked out of the federal election, I was smeared from coast to coast media, mainstream media, demanding that I be removed for asking for an independent investigation into 9/11. They also kicked off a liberal federal candidate at the time, Leslie Hughes, who had been a previous broadcaster with a major news station for years. And she dared to question the official version too. So they were able to get rid of her. They did not get rid of me at that particular election. After the election, then I was like persona non grata. I didn't exist anymore, and how dare I? And I was nicely smeared for questioning the events of that day. And since that time, the 9/11 Truth movement in Canada has actually grown all across. We were able to get one of the leaders of the Green Party, Elizabeth May, was able to put in a petition to our Parliament last December, not this past December, the December before, in regards to requesting or demanding an independent investigation. But that was poo-pooed by the Liberal government and the Conservative government in power. And they really went after Elizabeth May in the media for daring to submit a petition on behalf of her own citizens who had requested that she do so. So they are after anybody who even questions the official version of the 9/11, let alone wanting an investigation on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are your thoughts on, like, right now we're seeing a video that I pulled up on Flight 93. I mean, what are your, and the Pentagon, because we really don't get to talk about it. And actually, there's a lot of 9/11 truth groups out there that will fight tooth and nail over Shanksville and over the Pentagon as well. But this does not look like a plane crash to me.
Not at all. Not any other plane crash that I have ever seen, or any recorded plane crash where they have any video data on it, never shows a plane totally disintegrate. Not at all. That's impossible. What I understand, some experts claim that it was 2 missile strikes, and that they were able to use small cruise missiles to create these little holes in the earth. But had it been an actual 747 or what have you of that size, you would have seen parts and sadly people strewn all over the place.
Yeah, and the coroner that was sent out there actually said that he stopped being a coroner after 15 minutes because there was nothing there. He said it was just basically like a big, like somebody, put a bunch of garbage in a hole and set it on fire.
Yeah, exactly.
You're talking titanium engines. These things are gigantic.
Yeah.
And how do they just go, like they just disappeared, and they're not big enough to pick up and carry out of there before somebody sees you. You can't pick these things up.
No, exactly.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but that's what it, you know, I look at other plane crashes, even small commuter planes, and there is a ton of wreckage even from those.
Yeah.
And here you see nothing.
But I understand that what your media wants to do on the anniversary of 9/11 is to show the movie Flight 93, where it claims that people on board attacked the terrorist and brought the plane down. You know, which sadly is just another piece of drama that's been made up by Hollywood, because there isn't any truth to that either.
Well, no, and you can look at the timeline too, and there's just, at the time that these phone calls were being made, this plane was supposedly dropping, you know, 100 feet per second or per 3 seconds or something. There is no way you're going to be speaking calmly on a telephone when you are falling out of the sky like that.
Yeah.
At that amount of speed. Not to mention, I've never called my mother, Bev, and said, "Hey, Mom, it's Mike Soror."
Yeah.
You know, some of these calls were awful bizarre to me.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think that over time it's been proven that the calls could not have been done in the air like they said, because at that particular year, they didn't have that capability. They've also been able to discount Barbara Olson's account to her husband, Ted Olson, at the time as well.
Yeah. Well, not to mention either that, you know, technology, even now, my fiance flying to, you know, she flies to Colorado, flies to a bunch of places to visit family, and her cell phone doesn't even work. And this is 2016.
Yeah, exactly. So when are people going to have enough of the lies? I have no idea. But if it's allowed to continue, if these lies are allowed to continue and these illegal wars are allowed to continue based on the 9/11 lies, then sadly the only thing I see happening is another major attack that they're going to use to justify their continued perpetual wars.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at now.
Yeah.
Is, you know, that it's now the it's time for the now it's a Muslim thing again, where, you know, we've also, ISIS is without a doubt, it's Al Qaeda part two.
Yeah.
It really is, and we're funding them. We're funding them.
Well, it's certainly been a creation of your government, you know,
No.
And the world knows it. It just seems to be the American people that aren't knowing that it's your government that has funded and armed ISIS. You know, so when we hear about ISIS fighting in Syria and ISIS fighting in different countries around the world, the people aren't stupid. We know that that's been funded and armed by your very own government. So for them to now use these terrorists in your own country against your own people, we're like, where are the police? Where are the judges? Where are the lawyers? How come these people aren't being arrested when they're doing it now right in front of your faces and getting away with it so far?
Yeah, I don't know how they get away with it. It's we're too caught up, Bev. I mean, we've got Pokemon Go to worry about.
Isn't that wild?
Got to get ourselves that Pikachu. You know, if I could ever get a hold of that program and somehow, because I tell you right now, I'm not very smart with technology, but if I was that smart, I would love to put little flash messages in there like 9/11 was an inside job, or the UN don't belong, just whatever, to try to wake some people up. But I mean, Pikachu, we got to go for Pikachu. This is what we're concentrating on right now.
No, I agree.
You know, and it's I think Pokemon's a CIA program, to be honest with you.
It sounds like it is, actually, and look at how many people have been brainwashed with it.
Oh, we have a park here called the Friendship Shell. This place is pretty beautiful, and it's got a big, huge stage and everything. And that place was vacant You'd see, a few people walking for their walks because it's on the river, riding bikes, things like that. And now this place is packed. There are hundreds of people down there walking around with their eyes on that phone because that's like the prime location to catch Pokemon. I really should go down there and record some of it sometime so I could send you a clip of it and you'd be amazed.
Wow. Well, then it now goes to show how easily people can be manipulated into their way of thinking of what occurs.
It's already bad enough that they, when you check now, my kids, they have it.
Mhm.
And I'm not gonna lie to you, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna download this thing just to check it out. Because what do I gotta hide from? I mean, they're gonna find you. They're gonna find you.
Mhm.
And I took a look at it, and I was like, first of all, I don't even know the names of these things. My son's telling me all the names of them.
Mhm.
And but when you download this app, and it straight up even asks people, in order to play this game, do you give permission for this application to view your contacts, view your phone, have access to your camera, access to your microphone,
Oh, wow.
access to your, and people just agree to it. Yeah,
Wow.
sure, that's no problem. Yeah, that's no problem. People are like, well, if you're not guilty of anything, then what's the problem? It has nothing to do about being guilty or not guilty of something. It has nothing to do with anybody having anything to hide.
Mhm.
It has to do with the principle of this country, when it was founded, in our Constitution, the organic Constitution, protected our right to privacy. And we don't have it anymore. There's
Mhm.
cameras all over, every street corner. This feels just like the movie Enemy of the State, or whatever that other movie is too, that with Tom Cruise there, that you can arrest people for future crimes that they were going to commit.
Yes. Thought crime. And
It's
that's
it's
what they're
it's
talking
crazy.
about doing now is going after people with thought crime so they can take care of anybody who's questioning their motives and their agendas.
So in Canada, how do you guys what is September 11th like in Canada?
Actually, usually pretty quiet. I think, though, this year they're planning to have, they just had a Montreal forum, social forum, where the consensus panel was able to do a speech. And the consensus panel are world renowned members. There's, I believe, now 23 of them. They have come to a consensus on 44 points in regards to 9/11. And these are your top experts who have looked at the evidence, and in order to they have to have unanimous consent in order to push forward with one of the points. So I think there's 44 points now that they've come to agreement in regards to the events of 9/11. So that is phenomenal evidence for people that could be used in a court of law if anybody ever bothers to proceed with charges on this.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to believe that there's a number of 9/11 events. Most of them will be localized, whether it be in Vancouver or Toronto. But I do know that most places usually show a video or two and at least try and let people know what's been going on since the events of 9/11. So,
If you had to suggest some documentaries that are out there to watch,
mm-hmm.
what would be some of your documentaries for the listeners if they're not 100% on all of this to at least take a look at?
Well, definitely Massimo Mazzucco's video. I believe it's called 9/11, The New Pearl Harbor. Well done. It covers all different aspects, from the towers to the Pentagon to Shanksville to the military buildup to PNAC. It covers all of it, and it's very professionally done. Loose Change is always a favorite of many, and there's just so many. What to choose from. Architects and Engineers, Experts Speak Out is always a very good one because it tackles the evidence, scientific evidence of the towers and what took place.
Mm-hmm. I think In Plain Sight is another good one. Isn't the one there, the New Pearl Harbor, that even goes back to a little bit of, is that because I've seen so many, I got to remember. Is that the one that goes even far back to like a New World Order perspective too, or the secret society kind of thing in the beginning? Doesn't it go back to World War II, things like that, or is that not the right one?
No, I think it goes back historically a bit. At least I remember Japan's New Pearl Harbor being identified in the history of it, but I'm not so sure if I don't recall of it going back to the other
Okay.
Second
I
World
was
War.
just curious.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's a lot of really good documentaries that are out there
absolutely.
that people should really take the time to check out. And um, there's another author too. Um, there's another great man, Bev. My mind is kind of out there, but I mean, there's so many of them
Yes.
that I'm trying to remember. There was another one that I watched that really helped with taking you step by step um, for this guy, what it was like to wake up to this.
Oh,
And that
oh,
was,
The Anatomy of a Great Deception.
yes,
David
thank
Hooper's
you.
Anatomy of Great Deception.
Thank
Excellent
you.
video.
That is a
Yeah.
great video for people that are new to wanting
Yeah.
to investigate 9/11. And if you're waking up, this man will take you through exactly. And I guarantee you, when you watch this, you will say
Hmm.
to yourself many times, that's how I felt. That's how I felt.
Absolutely.
That's how I felt.
Hmm.
Um, so these are really good. And you know what I'll do too is after the show later I'll add in the description box some really good links that people can check out.
Absolutely.
And Becky's in the chat room doing well. She just put Loose Change's link up there. Um, so we'll have to add some of that stuff to it too. So now we're coming up on 15 years. And
Hmm.
this is going to be the time, if you notice, the only time it really hits the American public eye is right around election time. They start with the same
Yeah.
old play: terrorists, terrorism, terror. They're just 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. They spit it out constantly, constantly, constantly.
Hmm.
Why are we not talking about this every day? Is my question. I don't understand why it takes an election to talk about this. This should have
Hmm.
never have been forgotten.
Well, I agree 100%. And I was kind of astounded to hear that Donald Trump said he would reveal who was behind 9/11 if he got elected president. And I thought, oh my gosh, if you really want to get elected president of the US, tell the people now. Why do you have to wait till they vote for you before you share with them what you're aware of and who was responsible for 9/11?
Oh, thank you for that. That's just kind of like, hey, I'll give you the answers to 9/11, but you have to buy my book to read it, in order to know.
Exactly.
If you've got something that can save humanity or serve justice for a crime so heinous as 9/11, you should come out with it. I don't think that it's something that you should have to pay for or have to be bribed in order to know the truth. Give me a break. That's terrible. To me, that's using blackmail to get yourself elected.
Yep. Exactly. Because if he knows, share it now and show the people what you're capable of doing. Share the truth, go after them, demand an investigation on behalf of the people. That's going to show you much more as a potential candidate choice for the people rather than waiting to have to vote for you first.
Hmm. Well, and I don't have any viable proof in front of me, but it's my opinion that I'm sure if you dig deep enough, you'll find somewhere, somehow, the Clinton Foundation or something to do with. I mean, this thing wasn't just planned overnight. It wasn't like,
No.
okay, because Bush's numbers at the time, he was only 9 months into his presidency, and he was pretty much a sitting duck president. There were
Yes.
people very much complaining that
Lame
he
duck.
wasn't doing anything, and jobs, he wasn't doing any, like he didn't come through on any of these promises that I mean, he was not looking good as far as this guy having a shot at a second term. And then 9/11. 9/11
Yeah.
got him reelected. 9/11 um, it, from their standpoint, did a lot of good for the elites. Huge. And I don't think that it was the beginning. I think a lot of people believe that 9/11 was the beginning, where I see it as the middle of what's to come.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that it's very possible that in the future there could be an attack so bad that it makes 9/11 look like a playground fight. And that's
Exactly. And
scary.
what they'd want to do, well, what they'll want to do is keep the people who know about 9/11 truth quiet, because we're the first ones to want to investigate when anything happens.
Mhm. Well, you know, it all comes down to money, though. Follow that money trail.
Yeah.
Follow that money trail. That, I mean, it's. But I guess isn't
And
it kind
James,
of hard to follow a money trail though when it's just when it ends up missing?
actually, yeah, James Corbett has done an awesome job about following the
Oh
money trail
yeah.
in regards to the events of 9/11, including the short options that took place on both the airlines. Well, before that day as well. So he really does a good job of following the money in regards to 9/11. Who's funding
Right.
what? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. That's another one that we forgot to mention is James Corbett, and he does a good job. I like his video. In fact, one of the that video, the nine what was it, something like 9/11 in 8 minutes or something like that, or six
Yeah,
minutes.
it's phenomenal. Six
Um,
minutes.
yeah, and holy cow. If there's I haven't seen anybody watch that video and go, oh, that's all a lie. Come on. There's people that always watch
Mm-hmm.
and go, oh, I didn't know that. Is that true? And I tell people, go
Mm-hmm.
look. Go
Mm-hmm.
look. You know, we can only plant seeds. We can't grow seeds. That's
Yeah.
that's something that somebody's going to have to. And I know it's scary. Who wants to accept that things can happen the way we are explaining them as happening? Who wants to accept? I didn't want to accept it. When
Mm-hmm.
9/11 happened, that was the last thing I wanted to accept. Remember when I told you you were surprised too? Because I said in the very beginning, I said when I heard about this 9/11 truth movement, I wanted to prove them wrong, and I thought they were a smack in the face to our military and how ignorant are these people to believe
Yeah.
such lies and all this stuff. And then I went to research into it and kind of went, oh, um, I didn't know that. I didn't, so the people that I wanted to beat up on really bad, who I thought were so um, arrogant and so disrespectful, are the ones that I joined. I couldn't help it. I have the government's hearsay words, and I'm looking at facts and evidence on the other side here. So I can clearly see why people were questioning the events of 9/11. And this was only in 2004. And
Mm-hmm.
some of these people knew on September 11th, that day, something is not right here. I remember hearing many
Mm-hmm.
engineers coming out and saying, buildings don't fall like that. What is going on? You know,
Well, not only
um,
that, for me, it was NORAD. Where the heck are all these planes that are supposed to be up in minutes, defending the borders and the land of the USA? Where the heck were they that day?
oh, we had war games going on that day.
Mm-hmm.
And,
All
and that's
kinds of
another thing
drills.
to look at too is whenever there's some kind of major event, always look for the drills that are being run the same day. It's
Mm-hmm.
like clockwork. And the reason they get, well, how would they get away with that? If I mean, how could that go unnoticed? No, it's not unnoticed. There's people like us that do notice it, but how does it become unnoticed? Because you're so slick about it, and we've got too many people that are focused on other things. So it could be right in front of your face, and you still will not notice it.
Yep.
It's almost like
Yep.
walking by a car and seeing somebody trying to break into a car, okay? And that they're breaking into the car, but they tell you when you say, "What are you doing there?" and they say, "Oh, stupid me, I locked my keys in the car." And you go, "Oh man, that stinks." Well, good luck to you, man. I hope you get them out. And you keep on walking. That's what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
But the guy had a robber's mask on, or he was in all dark clothing in the middle of the night
Mm-hmm.
trying to get out of his car. It doesn't matter how obvious it is. We still are looking past it. We're
Yep.
looking past it. And right now, unfortunately, 9/11 has become nothing more than just a bad memory in this country, and that's sad to me.
Yeah.
That's sad
Yeah.
to me.
Well, what's going to happen with your upcoming election? It sounds like both candidates are ready to proceed with your perpetual war state. You know,
Boy, I don't know.
and the
But
thing is, you're taking on big fish now. You want to take on Russia and China at the same time. Hello, U.S.
yeah, yeah, and
Geez.
I'm sure we'll drag you along with us.
Oh, I'm sure you will, but we don't want to be a part of that. Thanks a lot, anyway.
Yeah, and Poland too. Poland's like, yeah, let's go. Why not?
Yeah,
You
no.
know, I don't know what's going on with that. I can tell you that um, Hillary's going to get this. Hillary's the one that's going to be in charge. I think she was already planned to be there years ago when her and Obama had that little meeting there with Bilderberg. And I think to me it was almost like when she wanted to be president the first time, and it was almost like I could picture them literally sitting her down and saying, "Look, honey, it's not your time right now. We need this guy right now, but you're next. Okay, so we need you to just be patient here, and we're next," because Obama and Clinton clearly couldn't stand each other, right? The campaign that they had against each other was just, I mean, wow. And then all of a sudden it's, I'm going to give Hillary Clinton the Secretary of State position. And what does she do with it? She gets people killed. And it's something that the Clintons have been doing for a long time.
By the sounds of it, she made a lot of great deals in exchange for hundreds of millions of dollars. She made sure that armament deals proceeded to certain Middle East countries.
Oh, sure. But don't you know, that's all just humanitarian aid. That's how they play it. My buddy Matt was on a show with him on Becky's show last night, and he was bringing that up about how they cover it up. And he said, he basically said, anytime it's called humanitarian aid, you better take a better look, because it's not.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I keep hoping that Hillary will be charged before the election happens.
Boy, that would be nice.
I'm not saying I'm a Trump fan by any means, but I really.
You guys thought we were joking, didn't you?
Yes, we did. We're like, come on, out of 300 and some million people in the country, this is the best you guys can come up with. I mean, oh my God.
Chance was like, oh, this is such a Hollywood stunt. And then he was like, oh, he's serious. I don't know. I don't like the guy. It's not that some of the things he says are very, make a lot of sense. I think financially, could he help? Certainly. I mean, he basically rebuilt New York, but he also, let's not forget of all of these companies that he has closed down and put people out of work as well, and filed bankruptcy and things like that. There's just a lot, when he says he's being honest and he's being a straight talker, I do believe that, because you can really tell that he does not have a campaign writer. Could you imagine being his campaign manager? What a job that would be for either of them. Whoever the two campaign managers are, even if you're good or bad people, wow, you are torturing yourself by taking that position for either of these two. And you deserve a drink. So, it's crazy.
I wish the U.S. well. It's going to be very interesting. I think the world's going to watch and see what the U.S. does. I would like to believe that the people have woken up to the two main choices enough to want to choose a third choice, or say none of the above, because I really am concerned for the future of the U.S. under either one of these presidential candidates at the moment.
Absolutely. I'm nervous for my children's future. I'm nervous for the future of our children here, no doubt. And it's scary, and these kids have no clue what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I
So
said,
what's it
there's
going to?
what's it going to be? I think
Mm-hmm.
honestly, my answer would be it's going to be a matter of survival.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are
Yeah.
obviously, when I say we, I'm not saying the American people. I'm saying those in charge here have really, really poked the bear enough times. I am
Mm-hmm.
surprised that Putin has remained as patient as he's been, to be
I
honest with you.
agree. Mm-hmm.
And but then again, something tells me, well, there's a reason he's being very patient right now, and I don't know what it is. Yeah, you know, he's made comments many times. He cannot talk to Obama. He cannot stand him. He cannot work with him. He is an impossible person to work with, to talk with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if that's the case, you would think that Obama's arrogance um, would drop and he would send somebody to talk to Putin that could see eye to eye with him and could talk, because this is important. And there's a lot of peace treaties that have been broken here
Mm-hmm.
in the last 15 years. So if you know, if Obama is somebody that Putin cannot have a um, conversation with, we need to find somebody that can make some sense here and go over there, or have him come here, and we need to talk.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you right now, China, Russia, not a good idea. Plus,
Oh, I totally.
we're still fighting wars in the Middle East.
Yeah.
It's just, man, I don't know what to tell people except for,
Mm-hmm.
you know, do what you can to survive.
Well, according to the media up here, the States is actually on the verge of nuclear war with Russia and China. So I'm not sure if your mainstream media is bothering to tell you that, but we're certainly getting really good indication that your country is really on the verge of nuclear war. And if that begins, especially against the two powerhouses together, these wars are going to be fought on our soil, on our land. It's not going to be done overseas in some cave somewhere. This is
Mhm.
going to affect all of us directly. And so that's why stop your government from from agitating the bear and China at the same time, because I think to take them both on is the worst mistake the US could ever make.
Well, let's look at, you know, we've already seen the damage that we're done taking on Afghanistan and Iraq, and is nowhere near as powerful as Russia and China. And look what happened.
Mhm. Mhm.
I
Where is
all
it?
I know is that this is a very, you know, we've been talking quite a while, Bev,
Mhm.
and we have been really saying for a while that we really don't have good gut feelings about this fall.
Yeah.
And here we are in September. We are literally
Yeah.
6 days away from the 15-year anniversary that where our world really started spinning every direction.
Yeah. Exactly. And we know that the US is headed for an economic upheaval, which is going to definitely affect us because we're 70 cents to your dollar. So when your dollar crashes, it's going to take us with you.
Yeah,
Um,
we're not far off.
exactly. And I think, your bankers might feel if they start a war, it'll focus the people's attention on that conflict rather than the economic crash. But either way, that this fall is not looking good for anybody out there. And if these people are allowed to continue with their agenda. But what I want to believe is enough people have woken up, enough people have seen the evidence, enough people know that they've been lied to. So now what? Where are your police? Where are your military to do the arrests that need to be made in order to keep the U.S. secure at this time?
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you make an arrest, let's say that the president, well, just as an example, is under arrest. In order to arrest him, or in order to arrest Bush or anybody that's out there, you would literally have to arrest what, 80% of our House and Senate too.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be a bad thing. I would have no problem with that.
Yeah,
But the
most of them
world
have.
banks, man, these world
Most,
banks,
yep,
big problem, huge problem.
yep.
And to kill in the name of a god or in the name of the almighty dollar just disgusts me.
Mm-hmm.
And
They've been doing it for years.
I was going to say it's not new, but I tell you what, we certainly don't
Yeah.
need people in our House and Senate that have been there, double my age. That you know what I mean? That have been there longer than I've been alive. There are actually representatives out there like John McCain. He's been in office longer than I've been alive.
And he shouldn't be in office. I really would like to take a look at his political campaign and how the heck he possibly won, because he was losing right up until all of a sudden he won by a landslide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy.
Eyeball machine or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. And and another thing is too is, do you notice all the enemies that the United States, that our government goes after, these foreign, quote unquote enemies, that we go after? All of them refuse to deal with the world banks. You don't find that a little bit of a coincidence? Maybe these guys are playing ball. So if you're not going to play ball, and I don't know. Sometimes people ask me about Trump too. You bring that up. I don't know. I've got a lot of different, I shouldn't even say theories, but possibilities. Is Trump in there to blow the election on purpose for Hillary? Could be. It's a possibility. Is Trump really serious and wants to do great things for our country? It could be. It's a possibility. But we've all seen in the past what happens when a candidate or somebody that's a representative of this country tries to do the right thing and speak out against the elites. We've seen it time and time again. What happens? And we'll see what happens. I guess that's all I can say is we're going to have to see what happens. Bev, I can tell you that over here, we don't have the same news you guys do. I can tell you that.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's really important that we have this show. So I've been delighted to be part of our first Canadian North American connections with the U.S. and to be able to continue discussing the topics of the day.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what we're going to do is Bev and I are gonna get together here and try to figure out where we can get on a schedule. And we can start, and this is going to be all types of topics too. I mean, everything that's happening over here is happening over there as well. As some instances are happening worse in Canada than they are here in the States, and vice versa. So we're in the same boat. We're under the same crown, and we've got to unite. We're all, anything that we do, good or bad, is going to affect Canada. And I don't want to see millions and millions and millions more of people losing their life for some special interests, I guess, or world domination. But there's going to be, unfortunately, we're going to see it. It is time for the people. So I guess if you're asking me who I want to vote for in 2016, I vote We the People for 2016. Yay. That's what I vote for.
I'll vote for that too, Mike.
There you go. So anyway, Bev, do you have any last words? Last words. That's terrible after what we just talked about. Any closing comments? Let's say that. Any closing comments?
Well, I'm grateful that we've been able to talk about 9/11 because it is still the major issue of the day. It has affected all of us in so many ways that I really do hope people look into it further, the ones that haven't and the ones that have. Push for some type of justice to be done legally, because otherwise the alternative is not good for any of us. So I want to thank you for being part of our show today, and I look forward to future shows on other topics coming up.
Absolutely. And there's also a good friend that I've met recently, and her name is Mama Lioness, and she's also a fellow Canadian, Bev. So
awesome.
I'd like to have her on the show too. She's talked to me a few times and tells me the same types of things you do. So you guys definitely see it through a whole different scope of things. So it's very good to do this. And I'm so excited that we're going to be doing this. So as soon as we get together and get a schedule down, we are definitely going to let everybody know. I want to thank everybody for listening. It's been awesome. The chat room's been awesome. Good conversations. And Bev, I'll be talking to you soon.
Sounds great. And thanks, everybody. Have a great day.